Hey folks, I'm Private Hudson and this is The Final Station. This is a side-scrolling action game where you play as a train conductor during a zombie outbreak. Or something like that. You see, the story is kind of hard to explain. Not only is the game ridiculously short, about 4 to 5 hours, but the story and lore are presented in an absolutely awful way, but I'll get into that later. I'll do my best to introduce it without spoiling much. Basically, about 106 years ago, there was an event known as the First Visitation. Something attacked, I think it was aliens, and this attack turned people into zombie like black monsters. Humanity barely survived, and afterward they banded together and started rebuilding. However, they've been under constant paranoia ever since, fearing the aliens would return. As a result, a lot of taxpayer money is being used to build a Guardian, which is this huge war machine. Final Station's introduction is great, especially the way it builds things up. At first it feels like just another day of work, but things gradually start getting worse. Communication is lost with the western cities, all other train departures have been cancelled, and eventually the military pulls you aside and gives you an order to transport classified cargo. Before you know it, the second visitation has begun. From that point on, you travel from station to station in a linear fashion. Whenever you approach a station, your train docks and is locked down. To unlock it, you need to get the blocker code. If the station is abandoned and infested with zombies, you go out and explore it, searching for food, medkits, money, as well as survivors and, of course, the blocker code, so you could leave the station. Stations that are still populated are places where you can drop off survivors, shop for supplies, and progress the main story. All this is fun at first, but it gets boring pretty quickly. Searching abandoned stations isn't all that exciting, mostly due to a lack of variety in just about every category. There's only 2 weapons and about 6 enemy types, 2 of which aren't even introduced until the last area. Loot consists solely of ammo, food, medkits, money, and ingredients for crafting, but the only things you can craft are medkits and ammo. Money can only be used at shops, which only exist in stations that are still populated. Ammo is self-explanatory, but you should never be short on it, since most zombies can just be cheesed to death by punching them. And medkits, well, yeah, you can use them on yourself, but there's no penalty for dying, because checkpoints are just so plentiful. So you may as well save them for what is without a doubt the worst part of the game, which is the actual train riding segment. So, once you're done exploring the station, you find the blocker code, you get back to your train, and you take off. The train that you're driving is an experimental one, which loves to break down all the time. Lucky you. You need to monitor its various systems, as otherwise they'll break down and cause the health of your passengers to rapidly deplete. At the same time, your passengers have hunger bars, and they go down constantly, so you need to feed them. And if you found injured survivors, their health goes down as well every goddamn second, so you need to give them medkits, as otherwise they're just gonna keel over and die. To make things even more complicated, this train segment is the only time where you can actually use those crafting materials that you found to craft additional medkits and ammunition. And occasionally you also get communications coming in from other conductors out there. Basically, you're juggling a bunch of tasks at the same time. But what truly makes this segment the worst part of the game is that the majority of the story, as well as the game's lore, is explained during these train segments. Keywords such as settlers, council, guardian, visitation, so on and so forth, these are all thrown at you right in the beginning, and you have no idea what anyone's talking about. But they're all explained in great detail during these train rides, because the passengers are sitting in the back, they're talking and arguing with each other. Problem is, if you're not standing in the car with the passengers, you miss the dialogue. You miss it entirely. It doesn't pause, it doesn't repeat. The only way to read all of it is to be in the passenger car, reading it as they're speaking, but this is impossible since those passengers need to be fed, the passengers need to be healed, parts of the train need to be repaired. I mean, I don't understand what the hell they were thinking. The best part is, there are times when you already reach the new station. The game is telling you to stop the train, but the passengers are still talking. They didn't even time this properly. I have no idea what they were thinking. The developers created a very boring, linear, side-scrolling exploration game that completely lacks any sort of challenge. The most interesting part is the story and lore, but they made this impossible for you to follow by forcing you to juggle a bunch of tasks at the same time that the story is being presented. It's really unfortunate, as the final station, it has a great introduction. It has huge potential. The build-up and atmosphere are great, but as soon as the introduction is over, you get into this gameplay loop of reach a station, search for supplies, kill zombies, find code, leave station. You sit in the train, feed survivors, heal survivors, craft ammo, craft medkits, repair parts of the train while trying to get as much of the story in as possible. Then reach another station and do the same thing over and over and over again until you finally reach a station that is still populated. There, you can actually walk around, talk to people, find notes, progress the main story, but then you're back in that same loop. Abandoned station, train segment, abandoned station, train segment, abandoned station, train segment. It's just so boring. It does pick up near the end, but since the story is just almost impossible to follow, I read reviews, I visited the forums, and nobody knows. Nobody knows what actually happened. A lot of people are just as confused and unsatisfied as I am. And developers like to keep it that way. They like to have this confusing ending where they know what the answer is, they know what everything is, but they just don't want anyone else to know. I just don't get it. Final Station is not a horrible game, but it's not a good one either. It's just mediocre.